Alright, let's see if we can get these valves out here, or release the springs anyways. Lift up, turn, and whoop, there we found the keyhole on that one. Bring you guys back out here. Let's see it come out the top. This will be our exhaust here. Yeah, here you go. You can see my hand on the light here. You can see that the face on this valve is pretty well black and worn. It hasn't been fully seating for a little while here. Some carbon getting up into the guide, but not too bad for the age. Not a lot of buildup on top of the valve, so that's good. We should be able to lap this in. Get it to seal again. We'll double check the valve stem tip clearance to make sure that's good. So we'll get the spring and the keeper out of here. Come on. There we go. And now the intake. It's got a little bump on the bottom left corner there, a little bit harder to get the tool in there. Same thing, lift and turn until we find, until we find that keyhole. That was easy. Come on. There we go. So now we got our intake here. We can see that while we didn't really have any leaking out of the intake, it's not quite all that shiny. That could use some cleaning up as well. And not as much carbon as I was thinking there could be. Let's get this spring out of here too. Alright, this one's got a extra one at the top here for around the intakes. That one sits there like that, so we got to make sure we get these all out of there. And I think we got one up here for the exhaust. Yep, there it is. The exhaust one's got the larger diameter. So let's have a look at those valve seats quick. See the valve seats there, pretty smooth. A little bit oily, pretty thin film of carbon on them, but not too bad. We should be able to get this cleaned up just fine. Remember to start at the top, work your way down. I'll set you guys up for a new view. Alright, so for cleaning purposes here, we're going to go ahead and take off that cylinder head gasket right away, so we got to loosen this bolt. Might as well pull this out of the way. Pull the cylinder head gasket out of the way. Put this back for now. Clean up all the fasteners too while we're at it at some point here. Come back with a gasket scraper. Got the piston up at top dead center to minimize the amount that can fall in. I'm going to do my best to scrape alongside of and not push it in. And I'll try to blow out as much carbon as I can before things go back together. So what will end up happening is I'll clean this off, I'll blow it off with some air, and then I'll come back and I'll wash out as much carbon as I can out of that top ring groove with some brake clean. And then, since I haven't changed the oil yet this season, I'll change the oil after all the servicing's done, because I'm going to end up washing out the valve ports and all that with brake clean. And so some of that's probably going to make its way down to the crankcase. So after I'm done servicing everything, we'll go back and change the oil and get that out of the crankcase. For right now, I'm going to go around and address all the big chunks of dirt and gasket material that need to come off first. Well, a freshly sharpened gasket scraper seems to be helping here. Do be careful though that you don't peel up any aluminum. Not wanting to push that over the gap or the edge. See if we can't just pick that straight up. So like I said, I'll be washing out that top ring groove. Try to blow it out with some air, get the big particles out, and try not to force it down, but we'll blow it across so it has kind of like a suction to kind of lift it up and out. These are wiped out. All right, next step, going to be lapping the valves. Now that our valves are clean, we're going to want to make sure we put this in, drop down gently. And I suppose I could have done this with the valves still in the springs still installed, but we want to make sure that we have a sufficient amount of valve lash or valve stem tip to tappet clearance, so that we're actually getting pressure on our face and seat intersection up here. The book for this engine says that their valve lash should be 4 to 10 thousandths. So if I start with my 4 here, I'm going to start with the 4. And I'm just going to use my finger to hold the valve down and pretend to be the spring. The 4 fits in pretty easy. So now I'll try the 5. The 5 goes in, but it's a smidge snug. So we're probably somewhere around 4.5 to 5 thousandths for lash on the exhaust here. So we do actually have room where we can lap this, and we don't have to worry about the valve being too long just yet. But after we're done lapping, we're going to want to recheck the lash and make sure we don't have to take a thou off the valve stem tip in order to make sure we have the minimum amount of valve lash. All right, time for some lapping compound and some valve lapping action. All right, for lapping our valves, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a valve lapper, and I like the one with the push button here, so if you have one of these, I think these are the way to go. You can buy these ones. These ones are pretty good. They work really nice. But since they don't have a pumper on them, you got to make sure that the heads of the valve are nice and clean and smooth. We're going to need some feeler gauges to verify our valve lash after we're done lapping the valves. And we're going to need probably a screwdriver to open the lid and stir up the compound, and then some brake clean for cleaning after we're all done. So this is basically how it works. Compound is basically grease and grit, or oil, various formulations. This particular kind settles out after sitting for a while since we don't lap that many valves. So I like to stir it up. By the way, you're going to need a bunch of rags too. We have to be very careful with this compound that we don't let it get anywhere except for where we want it. Okay, I don't want it getting on the stems. I don't want it getting on anything other than the valve seat and the valve face in the engine. We'll load up the exhaust valve here, and we'll go back over the engine. I'll take my exhaust valve, put my lapper on there, give it a pump, and hold. This one's nice and secure. I'm going to take just a dab on my screwdriver here. Try not to fling it around. And I'm going to put just a little bit on the face, around the valve face here. Okay, so we'll put a little bit on there, and then now it's time to go over the engine. So with it on the valve, I'm going to very carefully set my valve down into its guide, and I'm going to pick up and set down the valve while turning several times to distribute the lapping compound evenly in between the valve seat and valve face. Once I got that done, I'm going to just push down and twist back and forth. Okay, and then after every so often I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to set it back down and do that. And you can hear the grinding. And you can hear every time I pick it up and set it down, it gets louder again. And if I keep going without picking it up, it gets quieter and quieter. That's because the particles are breaking up and becoming finer and finer. So when I want to do quick work and do the heavy cutting, I pick it up in between each time. And then when I think I'm ready to pull it out and check everything, I'm going to do several times without picking it up to give it kind of a finer cut. Until it gets nice and quiet. And then when I'm ready, pull it out. Release my tool. And now I can go ahead and wipe off that valve face for a look. And what we're wanting to see is a light gray ring on our valve face that goes all the way around, and it's even in width all the way around without little black spots like these. That's some very minor pitting yet. So this one could stand to use a little bit more lapping. So I'm not going to bother to re-clean the seat just yet. I'm going to go ahead and okay, so I'm going to do a little bit more. So I'm going to reapply a little bit more to my valve. Get my tool. Okay, we'll distribute this some more. Pick it up, set down, pick it up, set down. Okay, so this is nice and quiet again, and I think this time it should be pretty good. So we'll take a look. Pop this up. Clean this off once again. You're done using rags like these to wipe off that compound. You want to make sure you discard these right away so that they don't get used for any of your other engine components. You don't want this abrasive grit getting on anything internal in your engine. So here we have our valve Still see a few black specks in there, but overall it's pretty good. It's pretty even in width all the way around. I'm happy with that. Here's a close-up of the valves after lapping. Other camera wasn't focusing very well. As you can see, we've got a gray line where the seat's making contact. It's even in width, and it goes all the way around the valve. So this one here is the exhaust. Next thing we need to do is we need to wipe it up out of the seat and the port best we can. We want to make sure that we don't push it over and into the cylinder. So I'm going to come this way first and wipe that out. Every time I wipe, I'm folding it inwards to trap it in there so I can't accidentally spread it. And then when it's too dirty or too folded, we get another one. And now you guys can see the seat as well. Let me see if I can enhance your view. And so you can see the seat is nice and kind of a bright gray, and it's clean. It's even in thickness. If I pick you up, you can see it's even all the way around. So that should help with sealing. The last thing I want to do here is I'm going to put this back in. I'm going to take my feeler gauge blade, use my finger as a simulated spring. I'm going to make sure I still have minimum valve clearance. Usually lapping the valve doesn't change it enough to change your valve clearance that significantly, but I still want to check it. It's easier to check it now than before I get to the cleaning and reassembly part. So I've got 4. I still don't have 5. I might even just take 1 thou off just to make sure that I've got sufficient amount of clear space for thermal growth when the engine warms up yet. Now we repeat for the intake valve. You can see this one here. The valve face is not quite as wide as the exhaust, but it is pretty close to being even in thickness all the way around. Let me hold that at a different angle for better light maybe. And here is the intake. This one too. It's even in width all the way around. Come on, focus. There we go. Even in width all the way around. And you can see the contacts like right in the middle of the face there. Now we have a look at the seat. And you can see that seat turned out quite nicely too. So here are the seats. You can see that they're nice and clean looking, and they're even. There's no more pitting or black speckles within the seat. And it's smooth and relatively even in thickness all the way around. And this one should probably be fine too, but we're going to double check it anyways. Make sure that we have it our minimum amount of valve lash. Oh yeah, this one's got plenty. More than 6 thousandths. We might need to make sure we don't have too much. Got a pretty loose 10 there. I might even see if I can do some more lapping just to maybe bring that down and get it at a good 10 or maybe even below. Might be a fair amount of lapping. Or we might have to break out the seat cutter and cut the seat. I'll start with a little bit more lapping and we'll recheck. You guys don't need to see that again. So now that our valve faces and seats are how we want them, it's time to start cleaning our parts. So I'm going to spray my valves down with a little bit of brake parts cleaner, some brake clean. I'm going to hose them off real good to make sure I get all those microscopic grit particles off of it. And then I'm going to take a brand new clean dry rag. I should also mention that before I turned on the camera, I had also went over and washed my hands with the gloves. I washed my gloves so that I didn't have any residue on my hands either. Let's get those nice and clean. I'll set those off in a clean spot. We're going to have to go to the engine. The same thing for the engine next. Okay, so to clean the valve seats and the ports, I want to wash out the guides just in case I wasn't careful. But I don't want all that brake clean going down into the crankcase. So I'm going to take a couple of clean rags. I'm going to pack my valve box with clean rags so that will soak up the majority of the brake clean and less will get down into my crankcase. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come by with a compressed air gun and blow across the top of this gap between the top of the piston and the piston and the cylinder to kind of create a venturi action to try to pull things up and out of this gap here. So with that, I'm going to just take my brake clean and kind of just hose down with the light pressure, wet things, and then some high pressure shots. Make sure I get the guides. Okay. Just like that. You will take a towel. We'll get the big stuff. Oh, look at how nice and clean that's coming. And then this is going to be the loud part. Take suppressed air. And then we need to make sure that we blow out all our holes in case any of them are blind holes. We don't want liquid sitting in them. And we pull out our rags. And we can see our rags are even somewhat dryish looking, so we didn't soak it down too bad. But we did catch it as it came out the guide, so our crankcase oil should be okay yet. We're going to put some oil back on the stems when we go ahead and reinstall the valves, which it looks like we're about ready to do. I'm going to take one of my clean rags that's still wet with brake clean, and I'm just going to wipe down this gasket surface a little bit more thoroughly. In fact, I'm going to get the gas tank out of the way, so it's just easier. There we go. So I'll add this bolt to the bolt that needs to be cleaned. You can see the threads have a bunch of junk in there, so we'll clean that. Make sure that this is good to go. And then what I can do is I can just bring that down just a smidge. And I will take my rag and I'll see if I can get anything off of this ring ridge here. There. Ready for reinstall.